Good morning. I hope everybody had a great evening, and we're back on the homestead here. Again, I was thinking about our government, and again today's politics. And again, I was thinking back in our greatest generation, and I remember growing up, and the one figure stood out, Paul Harvey. He went all the way back to World War II. He passed away, I believe, in the 2000s. He was one of the great Americans, and he used to say, now the rest of the story. And we used to watch him on 60 Minutes. Pretty entertaining. The thing I want to talk about is, and a question I have is, how many types of government has the United States had? Do you know the answer? Do a little bit of research. The United States has had two separate forms of government. The first government was a failure, and within a few years after it was put in place, the Continental Congress had to reconvene, and they discussed it, and they realized that they had a failure. The United States was doomed to fail. So we're going to talk about that. So how old is the United States? Is it 249 years this year, 243 years this year, or 235 years? It depends on which date you want to go by. Was the United States started with the Articles of Independence? Or was it started with the first forming of the first government? Or was it formed when the government that we have now? And what type of government do we have? What type of government did we have? And why did it fail? So again, as Paul would say, and now the rest of the story. If you know, please comment below. It would be much appreciated. So the War for Independence started in 1775. The Articles of Independence, which we sent to Britain, were written and sent to Britain on July 4th, 1776. In 1777, the Congress approved the Articles of Confederation, right? Which is pretty interesting. When we had the Civil War, we had the Confederates, which was the South, and then we had the Union, which was the North. So originally our government ran by the Articles of Confederation. In March of 1781, Congress approved the Articles of Confederation, basically forming our first form of government. In this government, the states had more control over what was going on than the federal government. The colonists were afraid of, or the founders were afraid of, that they didn't want to have a monarchy like they had in Europe. So they gave the states control, the majority of the control, which made it so that the United States, all they could do is work treaties with other countries, but they had no true control. It had to be approved by each individual state, and then each individual state could have its own laws and its own governing body, and the United States was more like a backdrop. This failed. It failed miserably because the individual states, while they had an agreement that they would work together, which, as we know, people today, most of them have trouble just working together in normal society. So if you're taking groups of people in individual states and trying to get individual states to work together, everybody has their own opinion, right? And there's a saying about that. We won't mention it. But they didn't get along. How long did the War for Independence last? The War for Independence, most would say, 1776, July 4th. No, that's when the Declaration for Independence was issued. So the War for Independence, the War for Independence ended in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. So from 1775 to 1783, the United States was at war with Britain. So in 1781, Congress approved the Articles of Confederation. In 1787, Congress met again and concluded that the Articles of Confederation did not work to govern a nation. You couldn't govern a nation when each individual state had more power than the federal government itself. And it started because of trade issues. Individual states were arguing over trade. They were arguing over borders. They were arguing over land. They were arguing over anything and anything. And the Founding Fathers met in 1787 after 6 years and basically dissolved that government. So how long did the government go without a constitution? How long did it go without a formal government in place, a federal government in place, to control or keep the peace in the country and a representative? Well, keep in mind that the federal government, first federal government, failed after 6 years. When the Continental Congress met, it took an additional 2 years for them to come up with the Constitution, the Articles of the Constitution of the United States, which basically set up what type of government. What type of government do we have today? Most don't know. Most will say that we have a democracy. In a true democracy, each and every person votes on and approves what's good for the whole. Every law, every act, everything that we do in a true democracy, each and every person has a say. What we have in the United States is a representative republic, or a democratic republic. It's a hybrid. In a true democracy, every person votes on what we're going to do. In a republic, you basically have representatives, especially in a representative republic, we have representatives that represent us. And the true Founding Fathers in the beginning, the reason why they set it up that way, one, the United States was too spread out. There were only 13 colonies, but if you had to get approval from each and every person, it would take too long. The second thing was, they didn't think that the general public, most of them, was smart enough to make those decisions on their own. So they set up a representative republic. A representative republic, we vote people in to represent us, to make those decisions for us. So now we're coming up on the election. The election, and each one of us is going to go and vote. We each think that the President of the United States is won by the majority vote. But is it? Is the President of the United States chosen because of the majority vote? Or are they voted in by electoral college, representatives that we put in place? Again, the Founding Fathers set up the electoral college. We vote in, we select people to make the decision for us on who is going to become president. Each state has a certain number of votes. You see that when they count the numbers, when they're choosing who won the presidency. Hence, certain states have more votes than other votes. We watch it as the election is coming to an end and a winner is chosen. Certain states have more votes. Those are the key states. You see that when we're coming into the end of the voting and the numbers are coming in, the candidates will concentrate on certain states over other states. The reason why we have an electoral college, again, was the founding fathers didn't believe the general public was intelligent enough to make a choice on who's going to be president of the United States. Whether it's faltered or not, in today's modern society we're a lot more educated. Every once in a while the debate comes up whether the electoral college is obsolete, and every year we come in to the election. The government that the founding fathers had set up in 1789 put checks and balances in place. Originally, we only had a legislative government. Now we have the different branches of the government. We have the judicial, legislative, and the different branches, which puts checks and balances in place, not allowing one branch of the government. The President of the United States does not have absolute power. He doesn't have absolute power, unlike most people believe. We can't have a monarchy in the United States. It's impossible without the approval of the other branches of the government. Today, on a side note, we have one party running on that if you vote certain people into the federal government, we'll end up with a monarchy. It can't happen. The checks and balances that are in place do not allow for that. So, what type of government do we have? We have a representative republic. We don't have a true democracy, unlike what other people think. Right? It's good for the whole, but also protects the rights of the minority. And we think that the minority has the right to overrule the majority, and we don't. In the United States, you do not have the right, the minority does not have the right to overrule the rights of the majority. The rights of the minority are protected, and that's through the Bill of Rights. And that's the rest of the story.